Hello and welcome back. It is now April the 6th, beautiful Sunday afternoon out here. We're currently hitting 21 degrees. I'm up in Spring Point, Alberta at my ranch. Just figured I'd show you what the different conditions are up here. Yesterday there was still a fair bit of snow out here, but it's pretty much all melted off now, except for little dribs and drabs here and there. You can see this is one of my dugouts is closest to the yard here. Really, there's not a whole lot of water in here. We've had very little runoff, even though the catchment basin for this dugout is quite substantial. You know, it's over a mile long up to that hill up there. And really, there's very little runoff in here. On the average spring, this dugout is usually overflowing, but she's far from it now. Well, it's now April the 7th, and it's a beautiful morning out here. We were 6 degrees overnight, which means our soils will start off the day fairly warm, which is a nice change. Should be up into almost 20 degrees today with a little bit of wind, but right now it's completely calm out here, and it's absolutely beautiful. So let's take a look at what's going on. Here in this canola stubble, there's not a whole lot of immediately obvious weeds when you look around because they're just not really all that big yet, but there is a fair bit of flicksweed here and there. So this guy is about, 2 inches or so. I'm still not seeing a whole lot of canola, but there is a couple here and there just starting to emerge. So that usually signals that ground temperature is kind of averaging around 5 degrees, at least at that germination layer, which is going to be relatively shallow for canola. So let's take a quick look here and see. On the dry stuff just underneath the surface, we're at about 2.4, so relatively cool here this morning. Once we get down about 1.5 inches into the moisture, it should be a bit cooler yet. Yeah, about 1.5, so still pretty cool, but I bet you those temperatures are going to come up radically today in the sun. Here we have a really good patch of downy brome in a field. This spot has kind of historically been a bit of a pain, and you can see it's breaking dormancy. It's getting going. It's still under 1 inch in height, so still relatively small, but there's a pretty good stand of it here. Got some nice flicksweed mixed in here and there as well. Now, if you have fields that are a real problem with downy brome, Gowan does now have a really nice product called Insight, which actually has really good pre-burn activity on things like downy brome and foxtail. I highly recommend giving that a try, and glyphosate itself with a good shot of crimson is usually pretty effective as well. Well, this field of canola stubble has quite a problem with volunteer canola. You can see we have quite a bit of canola in here. Some of it's at, already the 4th leaf stage or so that has successfully overwintered. There's also a bunch of flicksweed that's all kind of mixed in here as well. So pretty good stand of weeds in here so far this spring. So we'll need to get this under control. We're going to be seeding barley in here. Well, there's definitely some gopher activity out there. I'm just out in some barley stubble here right now, and there's a few active holes here and there. I wouldn't say they're all necessarily active right now. I haven't seen too many females at this point. It's mostly all males, but this is a great time to get out and do your gopher control. There's, other than a few flicksweeds and stinkweeds and tiny little kochias, there isn't all that much for them to eat right now. So getting some bait stations out right now, or even trapping or shooting them, is going to be extremely effective, and will cut down on that breeding population. You can really see now that as conditions improve and things get warmer, the kochia is really starting to grow actively, so it's gotten quite a bit bigger than it was when I looked at this exact field here last week. So we're out into true leaf now, not just cotyledon stage. Things are greening up, starting to photosynthesize, so at this stage, now is a good time to spray them and kill them. This is one of my fields that had a cover crop in it last fall, so this was oats with brassica in there. You can see we still got some cows in here grazing away. Not a whole lot of green material in here anymore, but you can still kind of see the corpses of some of the brassicas in here. There is actually a few that have survived over the winter as well, so that can be a concern as far as taking control of that. And of course it does kind of reset your canola rotation, because of course this field was absolutely plug full of flea beetles in the fall, so definitely something to be aware of. Here in this field of barley stubble, we actually have some chickweed that has survived over the winter. Don't normally see too much of this, but there's pretty good thick patches in this field, in this area here. Here by Kehoe Lake, we get some peas going in the ground here today, so finally the wind has died down a little bit for now anyways, and peas are going in. Things are looking pretty good. You can see there's our seed band there. Got pretty good depth, about 1.5 inches. Good moisture in the soil here, although now that this has been disturbed by a seed drill, if that wind picks back up again, that moisture isn't going to last very long, so hopefully we do get a top-up event here pretty soon. This particular field, soil temperature is about 4 to 5 degrees. Everything is looking pretty good. There's actually active earthworms in the soil in a few places I found, so That means our temperatures are coming up and in the healthy zone. Seeding peas is not without its risk at this time of the year. However, if you know that risk and you're okay with it, by all means go ahead and start seeding your peas. The risk with peas is once they've emerged out of the ground, they can be quite susceptible to frost. Frost can kill some of the growing points on peas. You know, they will sometimes pull through and put out new growing points, but I've seen quite substantial damage before. So keep in mind that April 20th of last year we were minus 15. So, I mean, that's not that far away. So we could still get another severe batch of winter. And if we do, hopefully the peas aren't out of the ground yet. I've been keeping an eye out on some of these patches of Russian thistle, seeing if we're getting any germination here yet, but at this time I haven't seen anything. There's just some kochia kind of mixed in here. Now, kochia will start to germinate with pretty low soil temperatures. As long as it's basically above zero, kochia can start to pop. Russian thistle does require significantly warmer temperatures. I believe it requires a surface soil average of around 10 degrees before it starts to germinate. Well, here we got more peas going in the ground here today. Things are looking pretty good. Got decent moisture once we get down into the seed row here. So there's our seed here. So looking like placement is pretty good. We're looking at about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches. Everything's looking pretty good here so far. Well, we're windy enough today that we're having our annual Great Spring Salt Migration. So this is just north of Nobleford. This is, I believe it's called Stud Horse Lake. Not much of a lake, as you can see. I don't think there's been any water in it really for about 5 years at this point here now, but this salt just blows for miles. And then if we actually get moisture during the summer, it'll get solubilized and flow back in, and fill it back up again. Well, there hasn't been a whole lot of spraying this week due to the wind up till now. It's just starting to die down here now. But I thought I'd just give you some spring spraying tips to increase the effectiveness of what you're doing. One of the first things you really should be considering is adding a water conditioner into the tank. You know, anything like Crimson, which we really prefer to use at AgroPlus, which is a Winfield product. You know, it's an AMS with a few other little ingredients in there, and that is really going to increase the effectiveness of your glyphosate. You know, but at the same time, no glyphosate should be going down alone. So even if all you're doing is adding some AIM into it, trying to get that extra tank mix ingredient in there of a different group will really improve any sort of control on any resistant weeds such as kochia. Temperature is also important to consider. When we're getting down to these low temperatures at night, you know, some of the weeds aren't necessarily shutting down completely, but they are certainly slowing down. And when their metabolism slows down, it slows down the uptake and the effectiveness of our herbicides. So quite often our herbicides will tend to work a little bit slow in the spring. Don't expect to see huge differences just a couple days after spraying. It might be a week to 10 days before you really start to notice much for symptoms at all. Well, I've been hearing reports of some cutworms being found in canola stubble, especially where there was volunteer and regrowth in the fall. Areas like this is a relatively poor area of a last year's canola stand. So far, I'm not seeing much. There is germinating canola in here and there, but overall, yeah. Scrape around in the trash here. Look underneath this, because that's where they'll be hiding during the day. I haven't really found anything here yet. I think fields that have regrowth, or the fields with winter wheat, is where we're going to see troubles here first. Here's some canola germinated there. So far, I haven't had any problems in any of my fields, but I am hearing to the north, Lomond area, stuff like that. There is some issues in some of the winter wheat up there, so keep an eye out. Make sure your crop's not disappearing. Well, that'll be all for this week. It sounds like the weather's supposed to take a turn this evening, or tomorrow we should be getting some snow or rain over the weekend. We could definitely use the moisture, but it looks like we are expecting cooler temperatures the next couple days, so we'll see how that works out, and we'll see you next week.